Good afternoon. Welcome to today's admin chat. I haven't done an admin chat in quite some time, so I'm pretty excited about our efforts today. And my name is Kemetia Foley, CAP. I am a longtime participant in Executive Support Magazine, writer. I'm a trainer. I am an operations manager. I am fill in the blank, right? We're all jack of the trades for most of us. But today's admin chat focuses on something really particular that we all went through during the pandemic, which was dealing with our IT teams. Now, tonight's topic is actually titled Move to the Top of the IT Queue, Improving Your Communications with Your IT Team. And I find this to be something that not everyone has to do because they may have a large IT staff and a large IT systems, but there's still things that apply no matter what role you have and what relationship you have with your IT team. So today I want to focus on a few things that are super important. Now let's back up to 2020, March 2020 to be particular. You're sitting there having your little cup of coffee, trying to figure out what's going on, what's going to happen with work, when all of a sudden you start getting ping, ping, ping from your supervisor telling you that you've got to set up remote work for your team immediately and that they want you to get it done ASAP. One of the things that happened during the pandemic was admins found out just how good or not so good their relationship was with their IT team. And so whenever we have an opportunity to build rapport, to learn from, to assist our IT teams that we work with, whether it's our internal team or a third-party vendor, we want to make sure that we have a good, strong relationship with that team. And how do we do that? Clear, concise, useful communications. It sounds pretty simple, but normally what ends up happening is it's not so simple. Because we end up in our role as administrative professionals being the translator between what we call the end user or our staff and the IT team. Now, today we're going to talk about some very specific things. I have a handout for you guys. It'll be in the chat notes below, and you can follow up with your own suggestions and own experience on IT communications. The first thing we need to know is know where you are right now with your IT team. If you're working with a large company, do you have a good rapport with your third-party vendor or your internal staff? Do you have a set person that you are responsible to turn tickets into? Does your team try to get you to submit the tickets for them? All of these things come into play. So know your IT team situation first. First and foremost, are they internal? Are they employed by the company, or are they a contracted third party that is responsible for referring to you guys and supporting all projects within your company? If they are a third party vendor, then it helps to know exactly the scope of work with which that they can support you. This comes into play often when our colleagues are asking for help with an IT issue that really isn't related to a work project, perhaps, or may have even be outside the scope of work that this IT company is contracted to support. So I encourage you to understand exactly what they will and will not cover before you have to submit a ticket, because you don't want to have to submit a ticket that is considered to be a medium urgency. They take a few days or 48 hours to get back to you after they acknowledge it. And it turns out it's not something that they can assist with whatsoever because it's outside of their contract. So for you, first and foremost, your responsibility, or your goal is to understand exactly what it is that your IT team can and cannot do. So for many of us, we've had the exasperating experience of working with IT teams that are super awesome at connectivity for hardware, VPNs, remote cloud computing, securing systems, but they don't know a darn thing about our software programs. And this is where we get into challenges for sure, because there is an assumption made by a lot of end users, and that's the terminology used by IT teams, the end users, and we're going to talk about the different kinds of end users that they come across. What can they do not understand what can and can't be fixed by the IT staff. This is where you come in. You can get that immediately when you hear them come to you and say, I just submitted a ticket, or they, ping you on Teams and say, I just submitted a ticket to IT because of this. And it turns out to be something is not within the scope of work, or it's something that somebody else has to handle, which we'll talk about momentarily. So make sure IT knows who you are, what your role is. And I was going to save this till later, but no, really, let's put it to the front of the queue, the conversation here. Do not abuse your role in the company, especially if you work in the C-suite. There is nothing that will have diminishing returns of respect with the IT team than you calling frequently and often for things that most of us know are not emergencies, but have to be done because the CEO said so. So be deliberate in your conversations with them, in your documentation, your notes to them, when and if it has to be bumped to a high urgent matter. Certainly, there are occasions that call for that. And sometimes it may even benefit you to ask your CEO or your supervisor or the team that you're supporting, do I need to drop names? Do I need to drop titles to get this done? Does this need to happen right now? And we'll talk about prioritizing issues a little bit as well. Make sure IT knows who you are. Now, I used to joke all the time when we had an internal IT staff. I don't at the current company that I work for. I have a third-party vendor. But when we had an internal IT staff, I used to bribe them flat out. I'm just going to tell you straight up. I used to bribe them to get to the top of the queue. I would bring them Chipotle gift cards. I would bring them M&Ms. I would, respect their time, respect their work, and but also just flat out bribe them. I'm like, look, can I encourage you, if I bring Chipotle, can you move this up during your lunch up the queue? And oftentimes that team would do it for me because I had a good working relationship with it. I didn't abuse it. I didn't contact them with communications that were frivolous. I think there's not a single person who has used a computer in this world that has never had that experience of a simple matter of turning their computer off and turning it back on, and all of a sudden it works well. Funny thing about that, but it's true. And I've even had that experience where the battery has died on my laptop and I didn't realize it wasn't plugged in, and I'm in a panic with IT, and they're like, are you sure it's plugged in? Are you sure you're connected to the network? And that can be pretty mortifying and a big waste of their time. But if you have a great relationship with them, they're going to chide you about it, joke with you about it, and let it go. If you don't, they might just have, roll their eyes when they see your name come through the queue. Who knows? So what are the things that we can do to build that relationship with IT? Let's talk about the most important thing up front. Do you know the lingo? Can you speak the language of your IT team? Are you an accurate translator for the crew? Now, in my particular situation, both somewhat recently, but not terribly so, I was working in a small organization that has a lot of people who are not comfortable with computers. So I want to talk to you about how the IT team knows how much effort they're going to have to put into a ticket. And let's start with the term end user. We mentioned that earlier. This is key IT terminology to understand, especially if you are the key translator between your team and the IT staff. So the end user is the person that is having the issue that has called you or submitted a ticket. But note if this will happen if your IT team reaches back to you first. Here's some information you can give them. The first thing is to use the 3 levels of IT users. End users. The first one is called an advanced end user. So the example would be to your IT staff to say, this ticket submission is from somebody who is an advanced end user. And that is defined as somebody who can explain various versions of software they are using on both their laptop and their phone or their tablet. They know when pretty much like the last update ran and the last ticket they submitted and what it covered. They generally comfortable with knowing cloud-based apps and on which drive where their project resides. You know, they never save their work to a desktop. That's a really basic definition of an advanced end user. They are quick to translate from one app to another. They know how to navigate the company's printers, the company's drives. They know how to airdrop on phones. They know how to file transfer. They know how to zip a file. I mean, they really understand advanced user. They really are. Pardon me. So the second kind of end user is the experienced, but not knowledgeable end user. And that is the person who uses the same 5 to 7 applications at work all the time, each and every day. They are comfortable navigating 75% of the applications they use, but they're not capable of translating or applying that learning to new systems. So they'll freeze up. So they're very comfortable in the stuff that they have to use every day. They know it well. They actually know it quite well. They're very comfortable with it. They can explain the work that they're doing in those 5 to 7 applications, but they're not capable of translating that when it gets to a new system. The third type of end user is what I call the survivor end user. This person uses the same 5 to 7 applications each and every day, but they rarely retain any of the knowledge from previous experience. You might spot their desk by, or even on Zoom or Teams, you might spot them by the various Post-it notes they have saved with passwords, IT support ticket numbers. You may even overhear them when you're in office calling their adult children with the phrase, "I just have a quick question for you about ... You may understand the frustration if you are someone who has explained the same process to an end user over and over again, and you know that they are not retaining it. Okay, so this is a big issue for sure. So if you've ever had that experience with someone that doesn't understand Teams or doesn't understand the basic tenets of how their systems work on the computers, they just log in every day and do the same things day in, day out, they may be what we call a survivor end user. And it takes effort to learn new applications, new shortcuts, new tricks. It takes effort to learn the right terminology to use when they're submitting a ticket. So they may just send a ticket that says, I can't get the audio on my laptop to work. It is so vague that IT cannot assist them. This IT will spend a lot of time trying to get more detail out of them. And it also depends on the queue system your IT team has. Sometimes you'll have an organization that works with you or internally that has a very detailed, it requires you to put in a lot of detail about your issue, so that saves them time once they get to it. The other thing to let your IT team know is, what was the end user's goal? What were they trying to actually do? Were they trying to broadcast? Were they trying to screen project to a wireless display somewhere in a conference room? Were they trying to connect to a different Wi-Fi or a VPN? Are they working in a software? Are they trying to convert documents from one format to another? In other words, is this a system issue or is it a software tool issue? Now, if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, the advanced user is going to definitely understand whether it's a system tool or a software tool. The experienced but not knowledgeable user may also have a good sense of that, but it may be more complicated than they realize. And then lastly, it's just that very vague ticket submission does your team no good. So when you have an opportunity to work with your IT team, if they don't have a system for you where it's very detailed when the tickets are submitted, ask them to provide a template for you to give your team. Ask them, what are the 5 top questions you need to know? What are the 5 things you need to know from the end user when they submit the ticket, besides their location, the issue? You need to know the software program they're working on. Are they working remotely? Are they hardwired? Are they working on Wi-Fi? All of those things. So maybe your team would be able to provide that sort of detailed checklist real quick that they could just before they submit their ticket. Gotta love allergy season. So does that make sense? Because what we want to do, and in doing so, by providing that information up front for our IT teams, is to respect their time. It is to show them we are working to speak their language clearly and concisely, get that problem to them so that it's something they can turn right around. For all you know, it may be a system-wide issue, but if you have the details up front, you're going to have a lot better, they're going to have a lot more respect for the person submitting the ticket. It's kind of an unspoken acknowledgement of respect for their time and the work that they're doing. Yeah. Connectivity issues. This is huge. Oh. So whether it is a printer or an online meeting to a webinar platform or a keyboard or a mouse or a printer driver, odds are that your survivor end user has one solution, which in fact, most of the time will do the trick, which is to restart their computer. But for issues like cameras or audio, IT will need to know the specifics, as in, can others see and hear them, but they can't hear the other person? Is there a default mic and audio setting that IT can set for this end user that is an automatic every time they log into a specific program? It would seem to be pretty self-explanatory, but it isn't always. So understanding the connectivity issue, especially if it's a printer and you're working remotely, if it is an online meeting and your team can't hear you and you're not on mute. You are on a webinar and you can't hear the speaker or the presenter. If it's a keyboard issue or a mouse issue, is it a driver? Is it a battery, for God's sake? It's just that simple sometimes, right? Making sure that we go through these things and think about them when we're working with our IT team, again, to show respect and save them time. But let's have a conversation about what are the vital pieces of information they need to know. They need to probably know the IT user's location, their name, which device they're having the issue with, and what software they're having the issue with, or what is the actual issue. So a lot of times with wireless, especially for online meetings, end users will have a terrible time staying on a strong signal because everybody is on wireless. Unless your company has set up a lot of boosters within your organization or has an amazing Wi-Fi system built into your company, you will find that the end user will have an issue with an online platform with weak wireless signal. For example, if you have a 2-story small office with 7 people all on wireless, and they're all trying to log in to the same webinar online platform, odds are one of them may have challenge staying connected. Just depends on how that system is set up. But it is frequently mentioned in most online meeting platforms that they encourage you to be hardwired via Ethernet or on a very strong individual Wi-Fi signal. Some people will just switch over and use their own phone hotspot if they need to, especially since it's right next to their tablet or phone or laptop. So connectivity issues. Now, here's a really simple thing that you can teach your team. When you have an opportunity and you know the end user is not experienced or doesn't think or thinks that this is done automatically, the IT team will often ask, so the ticket comes in, I don't know why my computer always runs so slow. Everything runs so slow. The internet here is terrible. Maybe it is not the internet. Maybe the issue is, did the end user clear their cache? Now, the cache is the memory that the internet browser retains so that when the user logs back in to that bookmark, it pulls the material that it was right there. So it kind of just holds on to it and then brings it back up to the top faster. But it can eat a tremendous amount of memory. Most end users don't pay any attention to this. They just know that their computer is slower than usual. And they've probably browsed 300 sites in the week and have not cleared their cache. So constantly accessing their internet browser without clearing their history or running a disk cleanup to clear temporary files will most definitely slow the loading speed on a device. And it will also do so on your wireless device on your phone. Absolutely. If you have not cleared out the browsing history, cleared out the cache for the apps that you frequently access, it will slow your phone down, most definitely. Freeing up that memory and clearing it out every day is a great practice to get into. If you don't know how to do that, you can just go into a web browser search tool and put in how to clear your cache. Or you can, if you work off a Microsoft Office platform on your laptop, you can also do what they call a disk cleanup and clean out only the temporary files. It will give you the option about saving the saved passwords. So you can just uncheck that box. Now, I would say 95% of the administrative professionals I'm speaking to on this webinar today know all of these issues, but have we had a chance to show them, especially in our smaller team settings, like, hey, I noticed you were having trouble with your computer. Have you had an opportunity to try to do this? Can I take a look at it? Now, maybe it's not in your job description. How much of our stuff is not in our job description? An awful lot. And what it does is it helps your colleague work faster, more efficiently, and it helps keep some of the smaller ticket items out of the IT queue. Next, standalone programs. Is the end user having an issue with a standalone program? Do you know which programs in your company are standalone? Are there some very specific databases that were written, or query programs, or customer CRMs, customer, oh my gosh, customer relationship module, there you go. Did you have a very special one that was written just for your company? If so, unless your IT team was involved in the writing of that program and implementation of it, that support for that particular program may not reside with your IT support team. So it's good to know one of the reasons they need to know which program you're having the issue with, because it could be right off the bat that the CRM your company is running is so specialized that it has to go back to the software company that wrote the database, provided the system to you, and integrated it into your company's servers and platforms, so that they have to be the ones to go in and troubleshoot. You can always start with your IT team, and they may say, no, this is an issue for whoever software you're using for the CRM. We can't fix this. This is something that has to be fixed specifically by the software author. So keep that in mind. When you'll see that a lot is when you have a system change internally at your company, and perhaps there's it doesn't do well with your specialized programs, one-off standalone applications. So we'll see that a lot, IT teams. Now, you know the lingo, or do you? Of course you do. But having that conversation with your IT team and saying, what are the things that we can do? What is it that especially if you know you have a repeat offender. If you have an end user that you know is somebody that the support team gets a lot of requests for support, how can you help? How can you make that situation better? Can you do some training with that end user? Can you go to your IT team and say, what can I do to, is there a constant issue that I can help you with this person? Just, it could be as simple as, helping them maintain their passwords, maintaining and updating passwords. A lot of times your systems will force you to change passwords every 60 days. That sort of issue. How about blue screens of death? That's definitely a given, right? If your computer just dies and won't reboot, that is an urgent ticket. That's no question for them. But when you have an opportunity to know your company's systems, but think of this as well. You work in an area that requires a lot of bandwidth for IT, and you have a new project coming on board. So you know that globally within your organization, there is a big amount of money being spent to implement a new system. How can we be proactive to help communicate, first of all, to our teams, these are big days. If you have an IT issue, can you push it through me first and let you do the troubleshooting through prioritization, or just have that communication within your team meetings and say, hey, remember next week, IT is going to be slow getting back to us because they have to roll out blah, blah, blah. Just that communication with them. And I used to go to my staff and say, especially volume for phone calls, let's just say that, say, do you need a phone call? Like, do you need me to hold your calls? This is, this is a customer centric company. You're not supposed to not take calls. You're supposed to always take calls, whether they call your cell phone or they call in through the front desk. But there is an opportunity if you have team members who are not good time managers to assist them with that. And in that, say to them, just a reminder, if there's anything you need help with next Wednesday, IT is going to be busy rolling out that big new database software or whatever it is. Just keep having that conversation so that you are managing their expectations about turnaround. Obviously, if it's an urgent matter, they're going to have people who are set aside for urgent issues during that rollout. There's only going to be, not the whole IT team is going to be on the rollout, but they're going to have people who are set aside for that. Yeah, it shouldn't be that complicated, right? So how do we build, improve that communication with our IT team, build that respect, and help our own team end users also be a part of that process by helping them know the lingo, by having a checklist of what it is that they have an issue with and how can they know what the issue is. And in smaller organizations, here's something key to know, especially if you're an office manager, an operations manager like I am, or you're responsible for payments for licensing or equipment inventory. Absolutely want to ensure that you have the inventory of IT equipment within your organization. So if you have less than 20 people and you're in charge of that material and ordering equipment for people, make sure you have the inventory of IT equipment, the licensing information for that individual kept in a secure cloud file in the cloud. Make sure that the file access to this information should be limited to your IT vendor, you, and your business owner. Those are the three folks that have to know that information. And the IT staff needs to have that. They need to have that. They need to know which license version you are on, especially if it's a particular industry-specific software. Those licenses can be incredibly, expensive. Cloud licenses are expensive, and you want to make sure that you know how to transfer them when somebody leaves or when somebody comes on board. And the IT team needs to know where that information is if they didn't implement it themselves. So make sure you're having those conversations with them. Seems pretty simple, right? So how do we move to the top of the IT queue? Make it easy for them to move you to the top of the IT queue. Have all the details and information available. Train your team to have all the information and details available. If your team member is struggling and one of those perhaps survivor end users, maybe you work with them a little more closely to try to get them to understand the role IT has. It's often mistaken that IT is supposed to stop everything for each ticket. They may not understand the priority queue. IT may go to them and say, I need something more defined. Can you give me more examples of what's a high priority? What's a medium priority? What is a low priority? so that I can give that to my team. And when they submit their ticket, they're submitting it correctly. It just requires that communication. Yes, it is not necessarily within our job responsibilities. However, it does make our life easier. It makes the person who is having the issue more efficient because their problem gets resolved quicker. And it builds a rapport and a respect with your IT team that they know that if they're getting particular issues with one end user from your team frequently, they can come to you to help work through that dialogue and see where that bottleneck is and how, and then once you are able to work with them and have that communication, you have made, like, there's going to be that kind of sense of relief. Like, yes, we have somebody on the inside who can translate between that end user and us and understands exactly what we're asking. Most importantly of all, if you get a call from IT about an end user's issue that you really have no idea what the issue is, like you don't know if it's software, you don't know if it's hardware, you really are baffled, say so. Let them know, guys, normally I would have some kind of information for you, or gals, for the, or I would have some information for you on what the issue is, but I am baffled on this one. It's going to require some dedicated time for me to work directly with Phil or Sarah, whoever it is. They appreciate that upfront honesty. I have made the mistake of trying to troubleshoot things myself before, and really what they need to know is if it's a software issue, if it's something that is really within a Microsoft Office project, if it's a Microsoft Windows issue, they need to know that. So, because it may not be something that they have an answer to. It may be something that, you go to one of our many phenomenal administrative trainers in our resource network, right? We go to, say, maybe Liz Green or Vicki Sokol-Evans or Marie Herman or Melissa Escabel or any number of these phenomenal trainers, Corinne Hoisington, who can probably problem solve that individual challenge quicker than putting a ticket into IT. You don't have to tell the end user that you have a secret resource. Just let them know how brilliant you are. And you can also just say, because of my profession, I have some amazing resources. Thanks for the compliment. I appreciate that you appreciate how hard I work at all the things that I know. So move to the top of that IT queue. Improve your communications with IT. Be consistent. Make sure you have those 5 things that are in that queue list that I mentioned to you. Have a good understanding of what's going on with your overall organization, but also very specifically with the end users that you work with on a regular basis within your team, because you're going to know where they are, that end user queue. Like, are they advanced? Are they experienced but not knowledgeable? Or are they a survivor end user? And I am very honest with our IT team. I will tell them upfront, this is an end user issue. They cannot describe the problem clearly, so I'm going to have to turn this one over to you. I cannot assist them. And they appreciate that tremendously. So thanks for joining me today. I appreciate the opportunity to do admin chat for Executive Support Magazine whenever I have the opportunity to do so. My name is Kemetia Foley. You can follow me on Instagram at Coffee with Kem, or on my website at coffee_and_courage.com. Thanks and have a great day.